Good evening to our friends at home. Let's begin this service or this meeting by singing hymn number 67. Gird thy heavenly armor on, were it ever night and day. Ambush lies the evil one, watch and pray. Hymn 67. I'll read from the Bible, and I'll be reading from the New English Version of the Bible, beginning in the book of Romans. Do not let evil conquer you, but use good to defeat evil. Let Christ Jesus himself be the armor that you wear. Psalms. The Lord is my stronghold, my fortress, and my champion, my God, my rock where I find safety, my shield, my mountain refuge, my strong tower. I will call on the Lord, to whom all praise is due, and I shall be delivered from mine enemies. When the bonds of death held me fast, destructive torrents overtook me, the bonds of Sheol tightened round me, the snares of death were set to catch me. Then in anguish of heart I cried to the Lord. I called for help to my God. He heard me from his temple, and my cry reached his ears. He rescued me from mine enemies, strong as they were, from my foes when they grew too powerful for me. They confronted me in the hour of my peril, but the Lord was my buttress. The Lord requited me as my righteousness deserved, and the purity of my life in his eyes. 1 Samuel. A champion came out from the Philistine camp, a man named Goliath from Gath. He was over 9 feet in height. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he wore plate armor of bronze, weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs were bronze greaves, and one of his weapons was a dagger of bronze. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and its head, which was of iron, weighed 600 shekels. And his shield bearer marched ahead of him. The champion stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out to do battle, you slaves of Saul? I am the Philistine champion. Choose your man to meet me. If he can kill me in fair fight, we will become your slaves. But if I prove too strong for him and kill him, you shall be our slaves and serve us." When Saul and the Israelites heard what the Philistines said, they were shaken and dismayed. Morning and evening for 40 days the Philistine came forward, took up his position. Then one day Jesse said to his son David, "Take your brothers an ephah of this parched grain and these 10 loaves of bread, and run with them to the camp. These 10 cream cheeses are for you to take to the commanding officer. See if your brothers are well, and bring back some token from them." Saul and the brothers and all the Israelites were in the vale of Elah fighting the Philistines. Early next morning, David left someone in charge of the sheep, set out on his errand, and went as Jesse had told him. He reached the lines just as the army was going out to take up position and was raising the war cry. The Israelites and the Philistines drew up their ranks opposite each other. David left his things in charge of the quartermaster, ran to the line, and went up to his brothers to greet them. While he was talking to them, the Philistine champion, Goliath, came out from the Philistine ranks and issued his challenge in the same words as before. And David heard him. David said to Saul, "Do not lose heart, sir. I will go and fight this Philistine." Saul answered, "You cannot go and fight with this Philistine. You're only a lad, and he's been fighting men all his life." David said to Saul, "Sir, I am my father's shepherd. When a lion or bear comes and carries off a sheep from the flock, I go after it and attack it and rescue the victim from its jaws. If it turns on me, I seize it by the beard and batter it to death. Lions I have killed and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine will fare no better than they. He has defied the army of the living God. The Lord who saved me from the lion and the bear will save me from this Philistine." "Go then," said Saul, "and the Lord will be with you." He put his own tunic on David, placed a bronze helmet on his head, and gave him a coat of mail to wear. He then fastened the sword on David over his tunic. But David hesitated because he had not tried them, and said to Saul, "I cannot go with these, because I have not tried them." And said to Saul, so he took them off. Then he picked up his stick, chose 5 smooth stones from the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag, which served as his pouch. He walked out to meet the Philistine with his sling in his hand. The Philistine came on towards David with his shield bearer marching ahead, and he looked David up and down and had nothing but contempt for this handsome lad with his ruddy cheeks and bright eyes. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come out against me with sticks?" And he swore at him in the name of his God. "Come on," he said, "and I will give your flesh to the birds and the beasts." David answered, "You have come against me with sword and spear and dagger, but I have come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the army of Israel, which you have defied. The Lord will put you into my power this day. All the world shall know that there is a God in Israel. All those who are gathered here shall see that the Lord saves neither by sword nor spear. The battle is the Lord's, and he will put you into our power." When the Philistine began moving towards him again, David put his hand into his bag, took out a stone, slung it, and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell flat on his face on the ground. Psalms. Strive, O Lord, with those who strive against me. Fight against those who fight me. Grasp shield and buckler and rise up to help me. Uncover the spear and bar the way against my pursuers. Let me hear thee declare, I am your salvation. Shame and disgrace be on those who seek my life, and may those who plan to hurt me retreat in dismay. May they be like chaff before the wind, driven by the angel of the Lord. Let their way be dark and slippery as the angel of the Lord pursues them. For unprovoked they have hidden a net for me. Unprovoked they have dug a pit to trap me. May destruction unforeseen come on him. May the net which he hid catch him. May he crash headlong into it. Then I shall rejoice in the Lord and delight in his salvation. From the Gospel of Luke. Then Jesus, armed with the power of the Spirit, returned to Galilee. So he came to Nazareth, where he'd been brought up, and went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as he regularly did. He stood up to read the lesson, and was handed the scroll of the prophet Isaiah. He opened the scroll and found the passage which says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me. He has sent me to announce good news to the poor, to proclaim release for prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to let the broken victims go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." He rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. And all eyes in the synagogue were fixed on him. He began to speak. "Today," he said, "in your very hearing, this text has come true." At these words, the whole congregation were infuriated. They leapt up, threw him out of the town, and took him to the brow of the hill on which it was built, meaning to hurl him over the edge. But he walked straight through them all and went away. Ephesians. Finally then, find your strength in the Lord, in his mighty power. Put on all the armor which God provides, so that you may be able to stand firm against the devices of the devil. For our fight is not against human foes, but against cosmic powers, against the authorities and potentates of this dark world, against the superhuman forces of evil in the heavens. Therefore, take up God's armor. Then you will be able to stand your ground when things are at their worst, to complete every task and still to stand. Stand firm, I say. Fasten on the belt of truth. For coat of mail, put on integrity. Let the shoes on your feet be the gospel of peace, to give you firm footing. And with all these, take up the great shield of faith, with which you'll be able to quench all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take salvation for helmet. For sword, take that which the Spirit gives you, the words that come from God. I'll now read correlative passages from the Christian Science textbook, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. The history of Christianity furnishes sublime proofs of the supporting influence and protecting power bestowed on man by his heavenly Father, omnipotent mind, who gives man faith and understanding whereby to defend himself, not only from temptation, but from bodily suffering. The conservative theory, long believed, is that there are two factors, matter and mind, uniting on some impossible basis. This theory would keep truth and error always at war. Victory would perch on neither banner. On the other hand, Christian Science speedily shows truth to be triumphant. Evil is destroyed by the sense of good. Explain audibly to your patients, as soon as they can bear it, the complete control which mind holds over the body. Show them how mortal mind seems to induce disease by certain fears and false conclusions, and how divine mind can cure by opposite thoughts. Give your patients an underlying understanding to support them and to shield them from the baneful effects of their own conclusions. Show them that the conquest over sickness, as well as over sin, depends on mentally destroying all belief in material pleasure or pain. The baneful effect of evil associates is less seen than felt. The inoculation of evil human thoughts ought to be understood and guarded against. The first impression made on a mind which is attracted or repelled, according to personal merit or demerit, is a good detective of individual character. Certain minds meet only to separate through simultaneous repulsion. They are enemies without the preliminary offense. The impure are at peace with the impure. Only virtue is a rebuke to vice. The exterminator of error is the great truth that God, good, is the only mind, and that the supposititious opposite of infinite mind, called devil or evil, is not mind, is not truth, but error without intelligence or reality. The teacher must make clear to students the science of healing, especially its ethics, that all is mind, and that excuse me, and that the scientist must conform to God's requirements. Also, the teacher must thoroughly fit his students to defend themselves against sin and to guard against the attacks of the would-be mental assassin who attempts to kill morally and physically. No hypothesis as to the existence of another power should interpose a doubt or fear to hinder the demonstration of Christian science. Unfold the latent energies and capacities for good in your pupil. Teach the great possibilities of man endued with divine science. Teach the dangerous possibility of dwarfing the spiritual understanding and demonstration of truth by sin or by recourse to material means for healing. Teach the meekness and might of life hid with Christ in God, and there will be no desire for other healing methods. You render the divine law of healing obscure and void when you weigh the human in the scale with the divine, or limit in any direction of thought the omnipresence and omnipotence of God. Moral and spiritual might belong to Spirit, who holds the wind in his fists, and this teaching accords with science and harmony. In science, you can have no power opposed to God, and the physical senses must give up their false testimony. Your influence for good depends upon the weight you throw into the right scale. The good you do and embody gives you the only power obtainable. Evil is not power. It is a mockery of strength, which ere long betrays its weakness and falls, never to rise. We should become more familiar with good than with evil, and guard against false beliefs as watchfully as we bar our doors against the approach of thieves and murderers. We should love our enemies and help them on the basis of the golden rule, but avoid casting pearls before those who trample them underfoot, thereby robbing both themselves and others. If mortals would keep proper ward over mortal mind, the brood of evils which infest it would be cleared out. We must begin with this so-called mind and empty it of sin and sickness, or sin and sickness will never cease. The present codes of human systems disappoint the weary searcher after a divine theology adequate to the right education of human thought. Sin and disease must be thought before they can be manifested. You must control evil thoughts in the first instance, or they will control you in the second. Jesus declared that to look with desire on forbidden objects was to break a moral precept. He laid great stress on the action of the human mind, unseen to the senses. Evil thoughts and aims reach no farther and do no more harm than one's belief permits. Evil thoughts, lust, and malicious purposes cannot go forth, like wandering pollen, from one human mind to another, finding unsuspected lodgment, if virtue and truth build a strong defense. If disease can attack and control the body without the consent of mortals, sin can do the same, for both are errors announced as partners in the beginning. The Christian scientist finds only effects where the ordinary physician looks for causes. The real jurisdiction of the world is in mind, controlling every effect and recognizing all causation as vested in divine mind. The physical affirmation of disease should always be met with the mental negation. Whatever benefit is produced on the body must be expressed mentally, and thought should be held fast to this ideal. If you believe in inflamed and weak nerves, you are liable to an attack from that source. You will call it neuralgia, but we call it a belief. If you think that consumption is hereditary in your family, you are liable to the development of that thought in the form of what is termed pulmonary disease, unless science shows you otherwise. If you decide that climate or atmosphere is unhealthy, it will be so to you. Your decisions will master you, whichever direction they take. Reverse the case. Stand porter at the door of thought, admitting only such conclusions as you wish realized in bodily results. You will control yourself harmoniously. When the condition is present which you say induces disease, whether it be air, exercise, heredity, contagion, or accident, then perform your office as porter and shut out these unhealthy thoughts and fears. Exclude from mortal mind the offending errors, then the body cannot suffer from them. The issues of pain or pleasure must come through mind, and like a watchman forsaking his post, we admit the intruding belief, forgetting that through divine help we can forbid this entrance. Ignorance, like intentional wrong, is not science. Ignorance must be seen and corrected before we can attain harmony. Inharmonious beliefs, which rob mind, calling it matter, and deify their own notions, imprison themselves in what they create. They are at war with science, and as our Master said, if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. Christ is the true idea, voicing good, the divine message from God to men speaking to the human consciousness. The Christ is incorporeal, spiritual, yea, the divine image and likeness, dispelling the illusions of the senses, the way, the truth, and the life, healing the sick, and casting out evils, destroying sin, disease, and death. Since God, divine mind, governs all, not partially, but supremely, predicting disease does not dignify therapeutics. Whatever guides thought spiritually benefits mind and body. We need to understand the affirmations of divine science, dismiss superstition, and demonstrate truth according to Christ. Today there is hardly a city, village, or hamlet in which are not to be found living witnesses and monuments to the virtue and power of truth as applied through this Christian system of healing disease. It should be thoroughly understood that all men have one mind, one God and Father, one life, truth, and love. Mankind will become perfect in proportion as this fact becomes apparent. War will cease, and the true brotherhood of man will be established. Having no other gods, turning to no other but the one perfect mind to guide him, man is the likeness of God, pure and eternal, having that mind which was also in Christ. At all times and under all circumstances, overcome evil with good. Know thyself, and God will supply the wisdom and the occasion for a victory over evil. Please unite in a few moments of silent prayer, and then pray together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Our second hymn is number 326. The Christian warrior, see him stand in all the armor of his God. The Spirit's sword is in his hand. His feet are with the gospel shod. Hymn number 326.
Christian warrior, see him standing, all the armor of his God. The Spirit's sword is in his hand, his feet are with the gospel shod. In panoply of truth complete, salvation's helmet on his head, with righteousness a breastplate meet, and face broad shield before him spread. With this omnipotence he moves, from this the alien armies flee, until he more than conqueror proves, through Christ who gives him victory. The strong in his Redeemer's strength, sin, death, and hell he tramples down, fights his good fight, and wins at length, through mercy and immortal crown.
This church is a branch of the Mother Church, the First Church of Christ Scientists in Boston, Massachusetts. The lesson sermon read from this desk on Sunday morning is the same read in Christian Science churches throughout the world. We welcome everyone who is watching our broadcast this evening. Children and teenagers are welcome in our Sunday school, where they learn the healing truths of Christian Science and their application to daily life. Sunday school meets at the same time as our church service, 10 a.m. In our reading room, a quiet sanctuary located in this building, you may study, borrow, or purchase the Bible, a Christian Science textbook, and other Christian Science literature. The reading room is open after every Sunday service and before each Wednesday evening meeting, or by appointment, anytime convenient for you. Everyone is welcome to attend our services, to use the reading room, and to bring children to the Sunday school. You may also access our website and YouTube recordings of Sunday services and these Wednesday evening meetings by typing Third Church Miami in your web browser. This meeting is now open to you to share testimonies of healing and remarks on Christian Science. Remember, if you are joining us from home, unmute yourself so we can hear what you have to say. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you to Yudi for sitting in and playing the piano so beautifully. Thank you to Eli for leading us in the singing. And as always, thank you to Joe and Josker for letting our Zoom light shine out in the world this evening. Let's close now by singing hymn number 292. Put on the whole armor of pure consecration, the breastplate of righteousness valiantly gird, with shield of true faith and the helmet of salvation. The sword of the Spirit is God's mighty word. Hymn 292.
Put on the whole armor of pure consecration, the breastplate of righteousness valiantly gird, with shield of true faith and the helmet of salvation. The sword of the Spirit is God's mighty word. For his is the greatness, the power and the glory, the victory is when for succor we call. His majesty shines in creation's wondrous story, and he is exalted as head over all.
Good night.